You've been walking past genius your entire life and calling it garbage. Every city, every downtown, every park bench and overpass where someone is sleeping under a blue tarp with their whole world crammed into a shopping cart. You look away. You make the same calculation everyone makes, that there's nothing in that cart worth stopping for, nothing worth asking about, nothing worth seeing. That cart is what failure looks like. That's what we've been taught to believe. But what if the most powerful engineering solution your city ever needed was sitting in a rusted wire cart on the corner of Fifth and Madison? What if the man pushing it had already solved the problem your city spent $17 million trying to fix and still couldn't? That's not hypothetical. That's Marcus Webb. And this is what they didn't want you to see. His name was Marcus Webb, 58 years old, Crestville born, 22 years with the city's Department of Water and Infrastructure, which is the kind of job you keep until you retire, until the city decides it doesn't need you anymore, until a corporate firm from out of state promises to do it cheaper, faster, and better, and the council votes yes because the numbers on paper look clean. That happened in 2011. Marcus got his letter in March. By August, he'd drained his savings fighting to keep his apartment. By November, he was on a cot at St. Michael's. By spring, he was in the park. But here's what nobody in that park knew. Here's what nobody walking past him with their coffee cups and their earbuds ever thought to ask. Marcus never stopped working. Every morning, before anyone else in Riverside Park was awake, he'd pull a blue tarp off his cart and lay out his blueprints on the nearest flat surface, a park bench, a concrete wall, once the hood of an abandoned car. And he'd work, rolled tubes of drafting paper, a 3-ring binder filled with handwritten calculations, copper mesh he'd salvaged from a demolition site, PVC pipe sections held together with zip ties and waterproof sealant, a prototype water filtration unit he had been refining in the open air for 3 years. While the city of Crestville paid $17 million to a corporation called Aquatech Solutions to fix a contaminated water crisis that had been poisoning the West Side neighborhoods since an industrial flood in 2019, Marcus had been quietly building the answer in a shopping cart, and everyone called it junk. Have you ever walked past someone like Marcus? Have you ever caught yourself making that calculation that a person's circumstances must reflect their capacity? Drop a comment below and tell me, because what you're about to discover will change the way you see every single cart, every bench, every face you've been taught to look through. Let me tell you how the city of Crestville got to $17 million. After the industrial flooding of 2019, runoff from the Harker chemical plant on the eastern bank contaminated the groundwater, feeding roughly 40,000 homes on the west side. The city brought in Aquatech Solutions, a private water treatment contractor with a glossy portfolio and political connections, and signed a 3-phase contract. Phase 1 was supposed to deliver clean water to 20,000 homes within 8 months. It took 18. Phase 2 introduced a chemical treatment process that temporarily fixed contamination readings but left a secondary residue that residents described as a metallic film on everything: their dishes, their skin, their children's hair. Phase 3 was quietly shelved after the internal audit. The city was now in year 5 of the crisis. They had spent $17 million. The water on the west side was still not safe to drink without a filter, and the filters Aquatech was selling back to residents cost $48 a month per household. There's the part that should make you angry. They didn't just fail to fix it. They turned the failure into a subscription. And here's where it gets remarkable. While Aquatech's engineers were working out of climate-controlled offices with 6-figure equipment and federal grant money, Marcus Webb was solving the same problem from a park bench with salvaged materials and 30 years of knowledge nobody had ever thought to ask him for. The system decided Marcus was irrelevant the moment it stopped paying him. That decision said more about the system than it ever said about Marcus. Because what was actually inside that cart was this: a gravity-fed, multi-stage water filtration unit built almost entirely from discarded materials. Let me walk you through what Marcus had designed, because this is where the story stops being emotional and starts being extraordinary. The first stage was a pre-filter layer made from fine copper mesh, the kind used in industrial HVAC systems, which gets ripped out during renovation work and thrown in dumpsters. Copper does something remarkable in water treatment that most people don't know. It doesn't just catch particulates. The copper ions actively attack and neutralize certain bacteria and fungi. They puncture the cell walls of microorganisms, the way a needle punctures a balloon. The bacteria don't adapt, they don't develop resistance, they simply die on contact. Aquatech's chemical pretreatment used chloramine, a synthetic compound that does a similar job, but leaves behind disinfection byproducts, some of which are themselves health concerns with long-term exposure. Marcus used copper mesh he pulled from a trash pile on Grove Street. Think about that for a moment. The $17 million solution created a secondary contamination problem. The salvaged copper mesh didn't. The second stage was a slow sand filtration column, one of the oldest and most effective water purification methods ever documented, used in large-scale form by municipal systems in Europe for over 100 years before chemical treatment became fashionable. You take a column of very fine sand and you let water drip through it slowly. Not quickly, slowly. That's the key word, and the key difference between what Marcus built and what modern contractors deploy. Inside a slow sand filter, something alive takes over. A biological layer called the Schmutzdecke forms at the top of the sand within a few weeks of operation. It is a living mat of microorganisms, beneficial bacteria, protozoa, algae, that digests and neutralizes contaminants as the water passes through. It is, in the truest sense, a self-regulating ecosystem. It costs almost nothing to maintain. It improves with time rather than degrading. Think of it like a garden that weeds itself. Now compare that to Aquatech's rapid sand filtration system, which runs at high pressure, requires chemical backwashing every 48 to 72 hours, and breaks down within weeks if the chemical supply chain is disrupted. One system works with natural processes, one fights them. One was in a shopping cart, one cost $17 million. The third stage of Marcus's design was activated charcoal, not purchased from a supplier, but made by Marcus himself from charred hardwood scraps collected from a nearby construction site, packed into sections of PVC pipe. Activated charcoal is one of the most effective adsorption materials known. Its surface is riddled with microscopic pores, millions of them, and as water moves through, chemical contaminants, heavy metals, and residual organic compounds bind to those surfaces and stay there. They don't pass through. They don't get redistributed, they get trapped. The entire third stage of Marcus's filtration system cost him nothing. The materials were in a dumpster, the knowledge was in his head, and the result, when Marcus ran contaminated West Side tap water through his prototype and tested the output using a basic home testing kit he'd bought for $14, the result was clean water. Now ask yourself, why slow sand filtration, a method that municipal engineers used successfully in major cities for well over a century, was abandoned in favor of rapid chemical treatment? The answer follows the same three-beat pattern you find every time something that works gets replaced by something profitable. First, speed. Slow sand filtration takes time to establish its biological layer, weeks, not hours. Industrial-scale rapid filtration can process millions of gallons per day and looks far more impressive in a board meeting. Second, cost of labor. Maintaining a living biological system requires skilled, patient oversight. Chemical treatment can be managed by fewer people with less training and more standardized procedures. Third, the invention of cheap synthetic chemicals after the mid-20th century made it seem like the old method was obsolete, that progress had simply moved past it. It hadn't moved past it. It had traded it for something that could be patented, bottled, and sold. A biological sand filter cannot be sold back to you on a subscription. That's not a flaw in the technology. That's why it disappeared from mainstream use. Here's where it gets worse for the people in charge. Marcus had submitted a written proposal to the city's infrastructure department in 2021. One page, handwritten. delivered in person to the front desk of the City Hall Annex on Broad Street. He was told to leave his contact information. He was never called back. No one reviewed his proposal. No one logged it into any system. It was filed, which in bureaucratic language is often a polite word for discarded. A man with 2 decades of institutional knowledge, carrying a working prototype of the solution, was turned away from a building he used to work in. And the city renewed its contract with Aquatech for an additional 18 months the following quarter. This is the part where the story stops being about Marcus and starts being about the machinery, because Marcus didn't fail the city failed Marcus, and then it failed its own residents, and then it kept paying for the failure because the failure was profitable for someone. That is not an accident, that is a design. The private water treatment industry is worth over $500 billion globally, and it did not reach that number by solving problems permanently. It reached that number by solving problems temporarily, repeatedly, and expensively. Aquatech didn't set out to poison the West Side, but they also had no financial incentive to fix it completely, quickly, and cheaply. Marcus had no financial incentive at all. He was trying to solve a problem. Those are not the same thing. If this is landing with you right now, if you're starting to feel the full weight of what I'm describing, hit the like button below. Because this story doesn't end in the park. It ends with a journalist named Kaisha Morales, who stopped at Marcus's bench on a Wednesday morning in October, not to talk to him, but to photograph him. She was working on a piece about poverty in Crestville. She needed images that would move people. She raised her camera, and then she saw the blueprints, not the man. The blueprints. She lowered the camera. She asked what she was looking at. Marcus told her. She sat down on that bench and didn't leave for 3 hours. Her article ran 6 days later. It didn't run in the lifestyle section. It ran on the front page. The headline read, "The city's $17 million problem, and the man in the park who already solved it." Within 48 hours, the city's director of infrastructure, a man named Daniel Torres, who walked past Marcus's bench every single morning on his way to the parking garage, was forced to issue a public statement. Within 2 weeks, a panel of independent engineers had reviewed Marcus's design. Their assessment was 3 pages long. The summary was 2 sentences. The system is technically sound. It should have been implemented years ago. Marcus was offered a consulting contract. He accepted. He was placed in transitional housing on the north side. His filtration design, with minor modifications to scale it for municipal use, was piloted across 8 distribution points in the west side neighborhoods by the following spring. The water tested clean. It kept testing clean. The $48 monthly filter subscription from Aquatech was terminated. None of this required a laboratory. None of it required a billion-dollar corporation or a government grant or a fleet of service vehicles. It required copper mesh, sand, charred wood, PVC pipe, and a man who never stopped thinking even when the city that trained him decided he was no longer worth paying attention to. So, what do you do with this? What do you actually do the next time you walk past someone like Marcus? The first thing is the simplest and the hardest. Stop making the calculation. The calculation that a person's circumstances reveal their capacity is not intuition. It is conditioning. It was installed in you by a system that profits from that assumption, because a person who is invisible cannot advocate for themselves, cannot compete for contracts, cannot challenge the monopoly. The invisibility is not incidental. It is structural. You can begin to dismantle it one conversation at a time. The second thing is practical. Organizations that work with homeless individuals who have professional backgrounds, engineers, architects, programmers, medical professionals, are chronically underfunded and mostly unknown. They exist in nearly every mid-sized city. They connect people like Marcus with the institutions that need what Marcus has. Find one in your city. Share their name. Donate an hour. It is not charity. It is infrastructure. The third thing is political. Every city in this country makes contracting decisions. Those decisions are public record. The next time your city spends double-digit millions on a private solution to a public problem, look at who reviewed the alternatives. Ask whether community engineers, including former city employees displaced by privatization, were consulted. Ask loudly. Ask in writing. The answer will tell you everything you need to know about whose interests are actually being served. Marcus Webb is a fictional name, but Nathaniel Ayers is not. Richard Hutchins is not. Ted Williams is not. The pattern, extraordinary competence dismissed by a society that decided a person's address determines their worth, is not fictional at all. It is documented, it is consistent, and it is costing us solutions we desperately need. Marcus was not a miracle. He was an engineer who kept engineering. The miracle is what happened when someone finally looked inside the cart. The knowledge was never gone. It was just pushed to the margins and left there, because the margins are cheaper to ignore than to engage. Don't let the next Marcus sit in a park for 3 years before someone asks the right question. Subscribe if you believe the people this system has discarded still have something to teach us, because that's what this channel investigates: the brilliance that got pushed out, the solutions that got shelved, and the systems that profit from keeping both invisible. Tell us in the comments, what community are you in, and what problem has your city been failing to solve for years? You might know someone worth asking.